Welcome back, everyone, to Fierce Honest Hearts. I'm Heidi Ferguson, and next to me is Fidista Ramsey, and we have Ramona back as our special guest today. And we're going to start with check-ins, like we always do. And I'm happy to start. And I think what I want to start with is I'm feeling this very exciting rush of growth and expansion around our podcast and around our IG channel, just considering the different guests, the people that we're having on, and how we're finally, I want to say, getting our act together and uploading clips so that we can, draw more people and interest. And because like the conversation I know we're going to have today, even though we're doing it live and I haven't heard it, I know it's going to be really rich and exciting. And I'm like, oh my God, I can only imagine, because I'm the one that creates clips. And I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what it's these little magic nuggets. And so that's exciting to me. And then the next thing that I want to share is that I don't do logo t-shirts, but I am owning this. It's Marquette basketball, which I got strictly for this tournament. The Big East tournament started about an hour ago. My nephew plays tomorrow, and I'm excited. And spoke with my mom a little while ago. She's excited, and my sister's at Madison Square, and so family's excited. And go Marquette if y'all are interested. And for our audience, if you don't have anyone that you're cheering for and you're looking for an NCAA team to cheer on, go for it. My nephew is number 13 on Marquette, and his name is, they call him Oso. His last name is Iguodaro. You'll see that on the back of his jersey. And yeah, feeling excited about all that. So that's my check-in for now. Ramona, do you want to go next, or Fidista, are you ready? No? Okay. Ramona, you want to go next?
Sure thing. I love that proud auntie energy. That's awesome. I am super excited to be with you two again. I love talking with you. And my check-in, as I shared before we went live, I'm just kind of really absorbing and being with the energy of the book group that I help facilitate, where we're really working with our feminine energy, what it means to be a woman, connecting with our physical bodies and our energetic bodies and our power and our creativity, and doing that in a way that's flexible and adaptable, and just seeing the way these women are so tenacious about getting to know themselves and exploring what's possible for them, and like going where they've never gone before, with the excitement and the nervousness and the all of it. And so I'm coming in with that today. And I think that's great for International Women's Day and International Women's Month. Here we are.
May I say that the feminine is rising more and more every day. I love it. Love it.
I love that so much. Yeah, as I said before the call, it didn't occur to me till today. And then I went, wow, how beautiful. And I was just sitting with my partner, and he was asking, like, what does it mean for you to be a woman? And I just felt so touched by the question, and whether it's enjoying his masculine energy, whether it's recognizing the freedoms I have as a woman, particularly an Afghan American woman. There's some real shit going down right now. And then I'm going to say the bittersweetness of, like, wow, it's not easy for women in many parts of the world, in many countries, including our own. So it always feels bittersweet, like holding what I get to celebrate, holding the celebration I have for my girlfriends and mentors and teachers who are women. And then this other piece that always kind of ignites a spark for me of, like, where can I help? So I bless it, but my heart aches with it every year, every time, until women are as free as they can be. So that leads me, Ramona, to thanking you, because you're doing that in our world. And I know Heidi and I have some questions for you, and maybe we'll do some deeper check-ins. But Heidi, I want to offer it up to you first, because you had some like really juicy questions you wanted to bring in.
Thanks, Vadista, and happy International Women's Day to both of you and to our audience. Regardless of how you identify, I think the ripple effects of, are touching everybody. So I know that you just recently came back from Benin, and there was this, I want to call it indoctrination, a ceremony of this female king, right? And so I guess my first question is, I have one that should proceed, but my first question is, how did you get connected to this community, to this group of women, and the invite? Can you just give a little background context around that?
Sure thing. So I follow a YouTube channel called Ancestral Voices, run by Dalian Adolfo and Verona Spence, where they talk about the intersections of various African spiritual cosmologies across the continent of Africa and the diaspora. And they did a whole series that took most of last year based on their documentary called Vodou, A Theology of Liberation. And it had a lot to do with the Haitian Revolution. It was all about Vodou and its its connection to the Haitian Revolution, and how that's connected to liberation and liberation for the African diaspora and beyond. And every month they met and had a conversation on a different topic. And the speaker that was with them every month was Her Royal Majesty, Queen Mother Semevo I Doedi Desir. And she is a Pojito, which means woman king. That is her role. And she's been in that role since 2022, early 2022. And she is the Queen Mother for the Royal Palace of the African diaspora that is based in the Republic of Benin. And so as I watched these different programs and was listening and learning about Vodou and learning about its tenets and how it impacted the revolution, one of the key things is that the woman who raised and trained Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who was one of the leaders of the revolution, was an Agogie, which is a warrior from the Dahomey Kingdom in Benin, what is now Benin, and was trained in warfare. And because of her training is what she was able to pass on to him in order to support this revolution for the Haitians to gain their freedom from the French and to defeat Napoleon's army, which he had the strongest army at the time.
Wow.
Yeah. So this was no small feat, and they did it by joining together. And the enslaved people that were on the island of Haiti did not come from all the same people groups. They did not speak all the same languages. And so they really, came together and committed to get this done. And it took time. It wasn't something like they won in a week. So during the last meeting, I believe it was in August, Queen Mother mentioned that the Woman King movie was going to be coming out, and she really felt that a lot of women, particularly in the diaspora, were going to see themselves in that and really, really be drawn to that, as well as the Black Panther movie was also scheduled to come out. And she wanted to give them a place because she has a training institute for women's leadership in place. And she thought, well, this would be a good opportunity. I really think people are going to be wanting this and ready for this. and that she had proposed a trip to Benin in 2023. And I was like, me. And so I then later followed up through her website to get more information and go through the application process. And that's how I ended up on the trip.
Wow. That's, the story is a journey in itself, right? And I am so appreciating learning and hearing that, and also really impressed with your ability to remember so many names and the correct pronunciation. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I'm just thinking, wow, that's really something. So I want to just go back a little bit, and I'm curious to know if you have, just for yourself, like aside from this, if you have ever done anything with your, like learning about your DNA. Is it called 23andMe, that thing that people do where they?
That's one. It's a brand. That's a brand.
Yeah.
There's others too. Ancestry.com. There's
Yeah.
African Ancestry. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah. So I'm curious, have you ever done anything like that?
I have. Yeah,
And
I have.
and what did you learn? Do you mind sharing a little bit of what you've learned?
Sure, I'd be happy to share. So I actually, my dad did ancestry.com for me when he was still alive. And my mom did ancestry.com for herself. And then I did African Ancestry. So ancestry.com just sort of gives you a breakdown of like whatever they find, but they can't say that this is from this side or that side. They just say this is what's in you.
Okay.
And then African Ancestry traces through your matrilineal, so your mothers, and that's for women. And then for men, they can trace fathers, and mothers. So I did an African Ancestry test to find out about my mother's mother, and then a male cousin of mine did it to find out about his father's my mother's brother. So that allowed us to find out about my mother's father's people. So hodgepodge would be the best way to put it. So I can tell you on my mom's side, we are Cameroonian, Congo, Ivory Coast, Ghana. And then there's this big chunk, like more than a quarter, that's other regions. We have a family story that likely we have Native American. So we did an additional test, and they said that my mom definitely has markers for Native American, but they can't say it's this particular people group or tribe or not. They have a guesstimate based on where her family is from, but there's not a way to say it's definitely this. We would have to do some additional things. And then for my dad's side, almost a quarter is from Benin, Togo, 30% from Nigeria, and then we have Mali, Cameroon, Congo, Ivory Coast, Ghana, England, Northwestern Europe, Germanic Europe, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Sardinia, and Ireland. So lots. And my dad grew up in Trinidad and Tobago, and Trinidad and Tobago was colonized by almost every European country over the years before they got their independence. And when I was in Benin, I had the opportunity to go to Togo, which is their neighboring countries. And I didn't know that at one point, before Togo was probably Togo, it was a German colony as well. So the Germanic may have also come in there. And then, so my mom's mother's people are of the Bisa people of Burkina Faso, which is right in that area. And my dad's, my mother's father's people are I flipped that. Mother's father's people of Bisa, Burkina Faso, and mother's people are the Mafa people of Cameroon. So it's been, I've been learning.
Yeah.
Little by little, reading my grandmother's autobiography that she wrote has been fascinating. I'll stop there because I could just go.
Yeah, I'm just kind of on this I don't know, this ride with you of hearing all of these places and all of this uh, intersections, even in that regard. Because I think one of my questions for you, I was curious if you were from Benin, because I just think of personally being able to go to the homeland or one of the homelands. And I'm curious for you, like, was this your first trip there? Had you been there? Did this have a certain spiritual nature to it for you? Uh, yeah.
It was my first trip there. That was also part of why I took the opportunity to go to Togo while I was there, because I knew my dad had that Benin, Togo, which they were one country at one time and got divided up by the Europeans. So it definitely had a spiritual component. And for me, it was about connecting with that ancestral, one of the ancestral lands, one that has a pretty large component in my family. And I just felt like it just, as I've been on this sort of openness to connecting with my ancestors, these opportunities have come up. So as I mentioned, my dad is from Trinidad and Tobago originally, and I had the opportunity last year to go to Tobago on a extended retreat and training. And that was an opportunity. I learned so much about my family that I didn't know by going there, and talking with my aunt about some things we had never talked about before. So I feel like this, it's, for me, it's more than serendipity or happenstance that as my interest goes in these areas, these opportunities present themselves. So I feel more led and guided than just stumbling upon things.
So your side trip to Togo, did you meet any relatives? I mean, your intention was because your father has relatives or has a history, ancestry. And so did you meet any of your relatives in Togo? Like, was that part of it?
I don't know any named relatives in really anywhere besides Trinidad and Tobago and Alabama and the East Coast of the US. We're still working on getting to know some more names. And that ancestry goes back quite deep. It's not like 100 years ago, even. This would have been maybe 300 or 400 years ago, sort of that time frame. So we don't have I don't have names. But I had an encounter with someone in the spirit who may have been a relative. I don't know. And I appreciate I don't know. I just really feel like there was a generosity for them to show up, to connect with me, to make their presence known, and for there to be someone there to mediate that,
Mm,
you know.
mhm. Thank you. Um, so I know that you have this program that's starting on the 25th, right?
Yep.
And given that you've had this incredible experience only a few weeks ago, and I'm assuming you've had probably a lot of the curriculum already created, but I'm wondering how, if that's influenced the curriculum at all, like how it's maybe changed it or how it's grown it a little bit. Yeah, I'm curious about the connect. I don't even know if I'm like, was it intentional? I don't know, but like I'm feeling this. I'm feeling that there might be a connection between the two, and how you want to bring that forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, well, the curriculum is, there are parts of the curriculum that are kind of like fixed. I want to make sure we cover this. but it's really also going to be shaped by the people that participate and what they need. So kind of like having a lot of options at our fingertips and sort of feeling what's going to be the best for them, because it's learning and becoming aware of some information about history. But then it's also processing that, and how we process that is really going to be kind of dependent on who is actually with us in the group and what's going to work best for them. So that's where there's flexibility. I think what I've gathered and gained from the trip is like an even deeper commitment to move forward with this. And I had a couple of a friend and a client and some other people saying, oh, you need to watch women talking. You need to watch women talking. So I finally started it. I haven't finished it. And it just is like, I really feel like no coincidence that a movie like that would come out now, because it's very much in line with the work that I'm doing. Is we women, people, but women need to be talking. We need to be talking to one another. We need to be really validating our experience, and then really moving in alignment with what we know, what we've experienced, and to keep coming forward and moving and dreaming and imagining what that future is that we want. And it takes work and it takes effort. And when our time and energy is really wrapped up in, wow, when our time and energy get wrapped up in thinking there's something wrong with us and I can't make it without a man, or there's something less than to be a woman, less than to be whoever you are, our energy gets drained away, and we're not able to be our full selves, to bring what we have to offer to the world.
Ramona, I'm really feeling tenderness, hearing you, feeling what you're feeling, which I won't project any words on, but and articulating like where we are sometimes as women, leaking energy, for lack of a better term, this idea of, because I know we're going to talk about the patriarchy in here too, like if you want someone to feel disempowered, shame them,
Right.
right? That's a key component of the patriarchy. And I think of, again, my heart's with the women in the world today who have been diminished,
Yeah.
quite literally, in their choices, in how they can exercise their rights, the kind of future that they're even allowed to
Right.
dream of.
Right.
And then even just the stuff that we deal with here in the US of being so worried about the number on the scale or the number in the bank, or how we look and the beauty standards, right? The social
Mhm.
standards, that really does take away from the power
Mhm.
that we can harness. And I want to say this, not to add like a silver lining, because this is still painful. Um, when I look at countries like Afghanistan, right? And the amount of energy that these men are putting towards trying to oppress the women,
Mhm.
what I glean from that is like, we are so powerful, we are a threat.
Mhm.
So I try to stay tethered to that
Mhm.
line, that we would not be on the receiving end, which is painful,
Mhm.
of oppression and attack. And um, gosh, I don't even know what the word would be, but that less than
Mhm.
diminishment,
Mhm.
if we weren't already perceived as powerful.
Yeah.
So it's weird, just even
Yes.
saying that to you both, it feels awkward, but I
Mhm.
know it to be true.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I just want to throw that in the pot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I too am feeling very tender around all of this and aware of, so we can look at the big picture, and then for me to turn the mirror on myself and to ask, because I think several months ago we had this, or at least part of this conversation, which was, what is my responsibility in all of this? And my responsibility is that I've allowed it. And I've allowed the patriarchy to keep me quiet. I've allowed myself to be scared, to not speak up for myself. I've allowed, and I've also allowed when I'm in the company of other women, allowed them to put themselves down in the spirit of, in the spirit of patriarchy. And so I'm grateful that I have more awareness around that, and that I can see what is mine and own what is mine, and then say, F you, like F you. I'm not doing this anymore. It's too everything. It's too painful. It's too uncomfortable. It's too unfair. Like, it's everything. And then when I think of my sisters who don't look like me, because I'm really aware of my whiteness. I'm very much aware of my, entitlement as a white person. So that takes things to an even deeper level. And I feel even more sadness because of what that brings. And so, yeah, I don't know where to go with this conversation right now, but I'm just feeling like, yeah, if we have some rage, or if we have some things to say, let's bring it. Let's talk about it. And for the men that are listening, because we do have some male listeners and viewers, I invite you to share your experiences too of how you have participated in this. And yeah, I think that's just kind of where I'm going to leave it right now.
Yeah, there's very much a both and, a continual both and with that. From different aspects, both what Farishta was saying as far as, what she deals with personally versus others she, may know in other places, as well as, excuse me just for one moment. That was me forgetting to alert my husband that we were doing this interview. So, and also you also sharing, Heidi, of ways that you've been silent or, complicit in some things, and also growing in awareness. And I definitely experienced that same both and of both of those things, for myself, ways that I was definitely complicit for many, many years, ignorant, and the work that I have to do to make amends and restitution and work on regaining trust with some people, and admitting to that and growing, and also not wanting to stay in the shame cycle of, because I caused harm, I can never do anything good, but it's like, yes, that was harmful, and I'm sorry, and what can I do to work on restoring and healing, and also speaking out now that I do know otherwise, and I know differently, and I know some more, and keep learning and keep sharing that with people who are in various stages and awarenesses. and not in a, I know all now, because I don't.
Yeah, ever unfolding, right? Hopefully. Um, I'm realizing as we're sharing this that there is this part of me that's like, yes, recognizing where I've been complicit and afraid and maybe even conditioned to be so.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also this sense in me that I'm personally trying to redefine what being a woman is,
Mm-hmm.
particularly being offered up. Again, I will say, at least in the US, and I know I don't have experience elsewhere, um, a very narrow definition of femininity, of what a woman is, what a woman is not, and
Mm-hmm.
whether that's, the tall and skinny, whether that's the demure and polite, whether that's the subservient and deferring. Like, there's just such a narrow definition that I got handed and went, okay, I'll try this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try this on. This seems to be what everyone wants.
Mm-hmm.
Think of my 20s, and then having to, through contrast, go, that's not it.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't feel good. That feels heavy on my shoulders. That
Mm-hmm.
feels like a mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
The chanteuse or the Marilyn Monroe energy or the whatever. Not to say we can't have all of it and be prismatic,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like I got like the teeniest, skinniest pie slice
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and was told to fit in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering for you two, what your story is there. Because I've just kind of been like, F all that. I would rather be me. But that's continuing. It's a continuing journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think that my journey is similar. And what I want to say about that, and I'm not blaming my parents, it's their generation. And my mom is now in her late 80s, and my father would be the same age if he were alive, but they were my role models. And that was what was taught to me, taught to my
Mm-hmm.
siblings, of people who were born in the early to mid 30s. And so there are, like you, I have had to unlearn, and not only unlearn, but like really shed these things that I have made considerations about over the years, over the decades, and been like, nah. Not only does not feel good, it doesn't sit with me intuitively, energetically, like all of it, all of the layers, it just does not sit right with me. And so then I have to start relearning, educating myself about, well, what does, then that opens up a whole other world, all these other layers, which is really exciting. And I'm like, okay, so I turned my brain off of that kind of, and now I'm re-engaging and learning all this. And because the other felt and was so narrow, there seems to be a much wider breadth of things, of information and learning, which is a little intimidating because it's a lot. It's a lot. And I'm like, wow, the opportunities and the expansion that is happening, because it's happening. I mean, I didn't start it. I don't know who did, but it's happening, which is really exciting. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so, and I'm glad that I'm not the one that started, because I don't want to be the one that holds that. But I'm happy to, ride on the coattails, or the ends of the coattails of women who have, And so, all right. I just need to breathe, but I'm just feeling very moved by it all and excited. And then the other thing that I wanted to add is that the ladies from We Can Do Hard Things had Gloria Steinem on their podcast today. And she was talking about her own mother and how her mother was a journalist. And it was really a fascinating, I haven't finished the conversation in any event. And I was like, she is like that. I don't know if she began, but she was certainly one of the founders of who we are as women and bringing that forth, because she's 80 or 81. I mean, can you imagine being alive that long and just watching history change, and also being almost 60 and me watching how history has shifted and changed over the years, and feeling the excitement of that, and also some sadness because of what we've had to overcome and we're still overcoming and working through and fighting through. But I'm seeing the light, or more of the light at the end of the tunnel, for sure.
Mm.
And this journey will never end, it just won't. We're going to be in it for a lifetime, probably. Yeah.
Few lifetimes at least.
At least. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Heidi. What about you, Ramona? Curious about your journey as a woman, and won't call it the highlights, but like where you find uh, the milestones in your journey.
Well, I have to say one of the really huge ones is having grown up in my family, an African American family, a multi-generational household, and Black women, the women in my family were doing it all, literally. My grandmother was a single parent. Her husband was killed when the youngest was 2. Youngest of 4 was 2, and she had to be the head of the household. And so the continuum and the range for me of what a woman can be and do, the example that I had was really broad, was really wide. And my mom also was a single parent. And yeah, so I saw a lot as far as an example of what could be. And as a result of my being in a very fundamentalist, conservative, evangelical church from about the age of 12 till 18, my wide got very, very narrow in terms of what I allowed myself, what I thought I should allow myself. And so it's been a long time of coming back out to the wider. So that's been my experience. And I remember when I had one of those rebellious and like world expanding thoughts of, I think we're all as human beings on this continuum, and really believe we have masculine and feminine energies, and they show up in different ways and combine different ways in different people. But it's all there because we're human. It's really what do we allow ourselves, and all of what's available, and that might be as a result of circumstance or choice or combination. There's a lot that mixes in that, but we're human, which means whatever is possible for one is possible for all, and what's possible for all is possible for one.
Amen. That feels good to hear and be reminded of. You have me getting in touch with, I had gone to Baptist school when I first got here, and had 3 or 4 years, right, in the Afghan culture where the women are bright, they're loud, they're colorful, they're playful, they laugh a lot, and then came into a very, high collared, broached, Virginian bouffant, not throwing shade at the Baptist church ladies, just naming what it felt like to feel that same zip up quality, like zip it up. And I remember we used to take a walk through this beautiful forest for recess, and the women who were taking care of us kids often seemed a bit rigid and tight and a little crunchy for my taste. And there used to be this home, like this cottage up the hill with this woman who was just always in a dress, humming songs, playing in her garden. And they would say, "Don't go near her, she's a witch." And I remember just being like, she looks like she's feeling good, y'all. And you all feel very crunchy to me. And I actually do want to be like her, right? There was a freedom and there was an exhale in her being, her beingness. So I'm remembering this this little compass that us women can be for others,
Mhm,
especially young girls.
mhm.
Like, here's another option, just throwing it on the table.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. What are our options? Right? I feel like, first of all, I feel like our options are expanding and growing all the time, almost to the point where it feels so expanding. And can we even imagine all the options, right, that we have? And yeah, I'm gonna sort of sit in that for a moment and just think about that. And of course after the conversation. So especially, I mean, especially as I'm feeling this more as I get older, because I don't know that I had an awareness around the constriction of the
Mm.
options when I was younger, but certainly, like, as I look back on my life, it was pretty obvious that the options were pretty constricted. But as I get older, I'm like, wow, there's so much more room to move and to change and to grow and to be more of myself as a female, as a woman in her prime, and how rich that feels and how good it feels and how um, and the other thing that I'm really wanting for everyone else, like all the women in the world, is to, and I realize that not everyone can necessarily feel that considering where they are, but that's what I want for. That's really what I want for everybody, because I'm over the constriction. Like, I'm over feeling buttoned up and tightened and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I feel like that's so yesterday, or 5 years ago or whatever. Yeah, like, bring more of that energy into our lives. Let's really do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also want to honor, that piece. And then the flip side, which is options for some women are closing, right? In other places. And maybe we can pivot over to some of the work around the patriarchy,
Mm.
for both men and women and non-binary, like for everybody. Uh, because I really felt touched by all those different cultures on one island coming together in service of freedom. So I
Mhm.
wonder, Ramona, I mean, if you have thoughts about this, no pressure, but I know the work you do, um, to remind us that we're not in sin, remind us that there's nothing inherently wrong with us, and from
Mhm.
that place of power to affect change.
Mhm.
Curious about your mission there and your heart there.
Yeah, I think it's primarily educational right now, and there's a lot about our history that's been intentionally hidden and obscured, um, as far as when it comes to patriarchy, for example, that like that is a thing. a real thing. Like I can remember what I was taught and told about the women's livers and things like that, that it was really put down and suppressed, and like you said about like stay away from her, whatever reason, stay away from this, it's evil. And so there really was an intentional people intentionally hid information. And so part of what I'm doing is intentionally bringing information forward and bringing information out, and to, the degree that I can, pointing to people that are doing research, that are bringing this information forward about it hasn't always been like this. God wasn't always male. God in some places has always been both and more. In some places, God has been female, only female, and male deities came along later. Like there's very much a feeling like whatever is now is what's always been, and it's not true. It's been very different in the past. And so I want to bring that forward for sure. And I think with some additional information, we can have some new filters for looking at things and understand, putting some things in a different context, like maybe some of those feelings of it'll never change, this is how it's always been, or this is good for us, or whatever. But thinking about, can we maybe get away from some labels that freak us out, in order to say, is there something practically helpful for us in this? If we just take this label off, like if you take the label of, egalitarianism, like egalitarianism may be okay, but if you say socialism, then it's not. And so instead of putting that label on it, just say, well, what is the practical effect of it? And what is our desire? What is it that we're moving toward? And how can we get there? If that didn't work, let's try something else, instead of giving up and saying, well, I guess all we can do is what we've always had, because nothing else that was different has worked as well. Let's say, okay, let's keep tweaking. Let's keep trying. We can keep going for something different, something better. And then, so that's kind of like in my corner of the world, where people have access to things and maybe have some space to consider taking in new information and shifting some things in their lives, some ways of thinking, without totally disrupting the apple cart and being, like out of sorts. Most of the folks I'm working with are not like just trying to put food on the table and things like that. So there's space to do some of this more cognitive work about what has been and hasn't been. And then I would say the folks that are like putting food on the table are very well aware of practicalities and what just like needs to happen so a person can live. And so then connecting with Queen Mother Semevo and her work, and others, to support connections so we can all rise and we can all grow and we can all move and have something different. I mean, that's where I would start. I mean, I could go deeper in whatever direction, but may need a specific question to help me get there.
Thank you. Good tone.
Heidi, did you have any closing questions?
I don't think so. I'm appreciating where you landed that, and I feel like this could be a part 2, 3, 4 for sure. Yeah. Shall we pivot to a chat box, or do you have any other questions?
I think I'm just wanting to name just the appreciation I'm feeling to be in a circle with women on a day like today, to be having this rich of a conversation. It's There's definitely something sparking in me. It's just having me wonder, like, what more is there? Both from a what more is there to celebrate, because that feels good. What more is there I can do? Um, and where can I be a download and a transmission that's different? I really do think of young girls and whatever they're contending with, which was, I thought I was contending with a lot with the fashion magazines and MTV, but it's a whole other level. Um, so yeah, thank you. I just feel really touched to have these questions kind of simmering in me, in service to just there being a more nourishing planet for men and women. Yeah. Any closing thoughts, Ramona?
Hmm. I think my biggest thought in this moment is both there's a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope for change, for growth. And I think I'm more aware of also the work and the effort involved and considering how it can be sustainable and the benefit of connecting with others, like-minded others, in order to support and sustain that effort, that together we really can do more than on our own. And we need each other, all of us.
Yeah, strength and power in numbers. Yeah. Mm. Thank you. Mm. All right, so we're really going to shift gears, no pun intended, but you'll understand why I say that in a moment. So what was the first car that you owned?
I think it was a Honda Civic. I was 16, and I was gleeful because it had a sunroof and and I think maybe a CD player, something like that.
Mine was a Chevy Spectrum.
And mine was a Volkswagen Rabbit. And I have a follow-up question, and that is, can you drive a manual?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Because my Rabbit, I bought it and I couldn't drive stick shift, and my father had I mean, it was a whole thing, but yeah.
A Rabbit is what I learned to drive stick shift on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, thank you again, Ramona, for being such a great guest and for sharing all of this. And we'll put your information into the chat and whatnot, and also on the YouTube channel. Thank you to our audience for continuing to be with us, supporting us, staying with us. If you have not yet hit subscribe, please do that. Share us where you feel led to do that. And until next time, much love. Bye, everyone.